Hi, I'm Alexander Vinyavsky. In these episodes, we talk about how to implement cyber immunity in practice and what should be the basis for it. We have already talked that it's often very expensive to prove the developed solution deserves our trust to it. And cyber immune approach allows to make it much cheaper by implementing the principle of minimizing the trusted code base. In short, this principle means that you need to make sure that the security critical code in the system is as small as possible. What is important here is that trust should be proved not only for the application part, but also for the system part of the solution, at the operating system level. After all, vulnerabilities at the OS level are the most critical. For example, in Linux operating system, drivers, network stack and file system are located inside the kernel. Unfortunately, developers make mistakes, and some of them lead to vulnerabilities. So, for example, by finding and exploiting a vulnerability in the USB driver, the attacker can get administrator rights and full control over the device. Just imagine possible consequences if by a device here we mean, for example, an IoT gateway installed at a factory and connected to industrial PLC, or, for example, a central module of a smart home system. Let's try to apply the principle of minimizing the trusted code base at the OS level. It means that the code that is implemented in the most security critical place, the OS kernel space, should be as small as possible. How to do it? We should move as much code as possible from the kernel to the user space. For example, a network stack and a file system. And to leave only critical components in the kernel. For example, we leave these components in our kasperskyos microkernel. As a result, a microkernel becomes quite small, so small that it can be thoroughly checked. That is why the security of microkernel OS is so high. Just for comparison, tens of thousands of lines of code in microkernels and tens of millions in monolithic ones. The minimalism of the kernel also reduces the likelihood of vulnerabilities. After all, the smaller the code, the less likely an error will be found in it. We will tell you more about microkernels, their features and our Kasperskyos microkernel in the next episodes. In the meantime, the conclusion is that the concept of a microkernel embodies one of the key principles of cyber immunity, the principle of minimizing the trusted code base. It significantly increases security and trust in the entire solution. Learn more about cyber immune approach in our next episodes.